There is perhaps no force more capable of destroying a person's peace of mind than the words of another human being delivered with the intention to wound. A single sentence can shatter years of confidence. A casual comment can haunt someone for decades. A public criticism can end careers, relationships, and dreams. Yet in all of human history, no one mastered the art of receiving criticism with grace quite like Lucius Annaeus Seneca, a man who lived perpetually in the crosshairs of the most dangerous critics imaginable. Consider the psychological warfare of living as advisor to Nero, one of history's most volatile and murderous rulers. Every word Seneca spoke could be twisted into evidence of treason. Every piece of advice could be interpreted as manipulation. Every moment of silence could be seen as defiance. He lived for years knowing that a single misstep in handling criticism, whether from Nero himself, from rival politicians, or from the Roman populace, could result not just in professional ruin but in torture and death. Yet Seneca not only survived this psychological minefield, he thrived in it, producing some of philosophy's most profound insights while maintaining his integrity, his sanity, and his commitment to virtue. How? Through a systematic approach to criticism that transforms one of life's most painful experiences into one of its most valuable opportunities for growth. If you've ever felt that sick feeling in your stomach when someone attacks your character, if you've ever lost sleep replaying harsh words in your mind, if you've ever felt your confidence crumble under the weight of disapproval, then what you're about to learn could change your life forever. Because the difference between people who are destroyed by criticism and people who are strengthened by it isn't talent, luck, or natural resilience, it's technique. The modern world has made criticism both more frequent and more brutal than ever before. Social media allows strangers to judge us instantly and harshly. Cancel culture can destroy reputations in hours. The comment sections of our digital age are filled with people who seem to exist solely to tear others down. We live in an environment where criticism comes from all directions, at all times, with unprecedented speed and reach. But here's what most people don't realize. Our ancestors faced criticism just as harsh, just as unfair, and often far more consequential than anything we encounter today. The difference is that some of them, particularly the Stoic philosophers, developed precise methods for handling criticism that not only protected their peace of mind but actually accelerated their personal growth. Seneca understood something that modern psychology is only beginning to rediscover. Criticism reveals more about the critic than about the criticized. But more importantly, he understood that our response to criticism reveals everything about our character, our wisdom, and our commitment to our own development. The approach I'm about to share with you isn't about developing thick skin or learning to ignore negative feedback. It's not about becoming defensive or dismissive. It's about something far more sophisticated. Learning to extract value from criticism while protecting yourself from its potential to cause unnecessary suffering. Most people handle criticism in one of two equally destructive ways. Either they become defensive, rejecting all feedback in order to protect their ego, or they become devastated, accepting all criticism as truth and allowing it to destroy their self-confidence. Both responses rob us of criticism's genuine gifts while maximizing its capacity to harm us. Seneca developed a third way, a middle path that allows us to remain open to legitimate feedback while maintaining our center when faced with unfair attacks. This approach requires neither the armor of arrogance nor the vulnerability of insecurity. Instead, it demands something more difficult but infinitely more valuable: the courage to examine criticism objectively, regardless of how it's delivered or who delivers it. Think about the last time someone criticized you harshly. What was your immediate response? Did you become angry and defensive? Did you crumble and accept their words as absolute truth? Did you spend hours or days replaying the interaction, coming up with clever comebacks you wish you'd said? Did you question everything about yourself based on one person's opinion? These are natural responses, but they're also choices, and like all choices, they can be changed once we understand what's really happening when criticism occurs. When someone criticizes us, we're not just receiving information about our actions or character. We're being invited to engage in a complex psychological dance that can either elevate us or diminish us, depending on how skillfully we participate. Seneca wrote, "How much trouble he avoids who does not look to see what his neighbor says or does, but only to what he does himself." This wasn't advice to ignore feedback entirely, but to maintain our primary focus on our own actions and development rather than becoming obsessed with others' opinions of us. But there's a deeper principle at work here, one that transforms criticism from a potential source of suffering into a guaranteed opportunity for wisdom. Every piece of criticism, regardless of its accuracy or the motives behind it, offers us information about ourselves, about others, and about the nature of human judgment. The question isn't whether criticism is pleasant or unpleasant. It rarely is pleasant. The question is whether we're skilled enough to extract its value while minimizing its capacity to wound us unnecessarily. This skill, the ability to receive criticism gracefully and use it constructively, isn't just about managing difficult conversations. It's about accelerating your personal development, building unshakable confidence, and developing the kind of inner strength that allows you to take risks, speak truth, and pursue excellence without being paralyzed by fear of judgment. Seneca faced criticism that would destroy most people. He was attacked for his wealth while preaching philosophy, accused of hypocrisy for serving a tyrant while advocating virtue, and condemned for his influence over Nero's worst decisions. Yet he used each attack as raw material for deeper self-understanding and more refined wisdom. He transformed his critics into unwitting teachers and their hostility into fuel for his own growth. The method he developed isn't just ancient wisdom, it's practical psychology that works just as effectively today as it did 2,000 years ago. Whether you're facing criticism from colleagues, family members, online strangers, or that harsh inner voice that never seems satisfied with your efforts, these techniques will change your relationship with judgment forever. Are you ready to discover how the most criticized philosopher in ancient Rome learned to transform attacks into advantages, insults into insights, and condemnation into character development? The first principle Seneca applied when facing criticism was what he called the separation of wheat from chaff, the ability to distinguish between legitimate feedback that deserves consideration and illegitimate attacks that deserve only acknowledgement before dismissal. This isn't about defending your ego or rejecting uncomfortable truths. It's about developing the discernment to recognize what serves your growth versus what serves only someone else's need to diminish you. When criticism comes your way, Seneca taught, your first task isn't to defend yourself or to accept the criticism blindly. Your first task is to examine the criticism itself with the detachment of a philosopher analyzing a proposition. Is this feedback specific and actionable, or is it vague and inflammatory? Is it focused on your actions and their consequences, or is it an attack on your character and worth as a person? Is it delivered with the intention to help you improve, or with the intention to wound and diminish you? This examination must happen quickly but thoroughly. You don't have the luxury of extended analysis when someone is criticizing you in real time, but you can develop the ability to rapidly assess the quality and intent of feedback. Seneca wrote, "The willing, destiny guides them. The unwilling, destiny drags them." The same principle applies to criticism. You can choose to be guided by valuable feedback or dragged down by worthless attacks. Consider the difference between someone saying, "Your presentation lacked clear structure and specific examples," versus, "You're terrible at public speaking and shouldn't even try." The first offers specific, actionable information that can help you improve. The second offers only a global judgment that serves no constructive purpose. Learning to distinguish between these types of criticism instantly is the first step toward emotional freedom. But here's where most people make a crucial error. They assume that criticism must be delivered kindly and constructively to have value. Seneca understood that valuable information can come wrapped in the most unpleasant packaging. Sometimes the harshest critics reveal truths that friends are too polite to mention. Sometimes our enemies see our blind spots more clearly than our allies. This is why Seneca developed his second principle: mine the criticism for gold, regardless of the mine's appearance. Even in the most vicious attack, there might be a kernel of truth worth extracting. Even in the most unfair judgment, there might be a perspective worth considering. The key is learning to separate the valuable information from the destructive delivery method. When someone attacks you personally, instead of becoming defensive, ask yourself, if I strip away the emotion and hostility from this criticism, what specific claim is being made about my actions or decisions? Is there any accuracy to that claim? Is there any way I could use this information to become better at what I do or who I am? This doesn't mean accepting abuse or allowing people to treat you poorly. It means refusing to let other people's poor delivery methods rob you of potentially valuable information. Seneca faced critics who wanted him dead, yet he still examined their arguments for any truth they might contain. If he could maintain this level of objectivity under those circumstances, we can certainly do it when facing far less consequential criticism. The third principle Seneca employed might be the most psychologically sophisticated: understanding the critic's motivation without taking responsibility for their emotional state. When someone criticizes you harshly, they're revealing something about themselves, their fears, their insecurities, their unmet needs, their pain. This doesn't excuse their behavior, but it does explain it, and understanding it can free you from taking their words more seriously than they deserve. People often criticize others for exhibiting qualities they dislike in themselves. They attack others for having what they want but lack. They tear down others to feel better about their own perceived inadequacies. Recognizing these patterns doesn't make you superior to your critics. It makes you more compassionate toward them while protecting you from being destroyed by their projections. Seneca wrote, "Every man is in bondage to fear who depends upon the whims of fortune." Many of your harshest critics are people living in fear. Fear of their own inadequacy, fear of being judged themselves, fear of losing status or control. Their criticism of you is often just fear expressed as aggression. When you understand this, you can respond to their fear with compassion while refusing to absorb their anxiety as your own. The fourth principle addresses what might be the most challenging aspect of receiving criticism: maintaining your emotional equilibrium when someone attacks something you care deeply about. Seneca called this the discipline of desire, the practice of caring deeply about your values and goals while remaining detached from others' opinions of your pursuit of those values and goals. This is a delicate balance. You want to care enough about your work, your relationships, and your character to invest genuine effort in improving them. But you don't want to care so much about others' approval that criticism devastates you or praise inflates you beyond reason. The goal is what Seneca called passionate detachment, full engagement with your purposes combined with philosophical distance from others' judgments of your purposes. When someone criticizes something you've poured your heart into, the natural response is to feel wounded, angry, or defensive. But Seneca taught that you can acknowledge these feelings without being controlled by them. You can say to yourself, "I notice that I'm feeling hurt by this criticism because I care deeply about this work." That caring is appropriate and valuable. The hurt is natural but not necessarily accurate information about the quality of my work or my worth as a person. This internal dialogue creates space between your initial emotional reaction and your considered response. In that space, you can choose how to engage with the criticism based on your principles rather than your impulses. You can extract whatever value the criticism contains while protecting yourself from unnecessary emotional damage. The fifth principle might be the most liberating: understanding that you are not responsible for managing other people's emotional reactions to your existence, your choices, or your success. Some people will criticize you no matter what you do. Some people will find fault with your best efforts. Some people will judge you for qualities they would praise in others. This isn't your fault, and it's not your responsibility to fix. Seneca lived this principle daily. As a wealthy philosopher, he was criticized for having money. As an advisor to Nero, he was criticized for his proximity to power. As a writer of moral philosophy, he was criticized for any gap between his ideals and his practice. He could have spent his entire life trying to appease his critics, but he understood that doing so would mean abandoning his actual responsibilities in favor of managing others' perceptions. This doesn't mean becoming callous or dismissive of all feedback. It means recognizing that some criticism says more about the critic's needs than about your actions. It means understanding that you can't control others' opinions, but you can control how much power you give those opinions over your peace of mind and your choices. Now we come to perhaps the most counterintuitive aspect of Seneca's approach to criticism: the practice of gratitude toward your critics. This isn't about becoming a doormat or pretending to enjoy harsh treatment. It's about recognizing that critics, even unfair ones, provide you with invaluable opportunities for character development that you simply cannot get any other way. Seneca wrote, "How much more grievous are the consequences of anger than the causes of it?" He understood that our response to criticism often causes us more suffering than the criticism itself. When we become angry, defensive, or devastated by criticism, we're allowing other people's words to control our emotional state, our decision-making, and our peace of mind. We're giving them power over us that they don't deserve, and we can't afford to surrender. But when we approach criticism as a training ground for virtue, something remarkable happens. Each harsh word becomes an opportunity to practice patience. Each unfair judgment becomes a chance to develop equanimity. Each personal attack becomes a moment to demonstrate grace under pressure. Your critics, without intending to, become your coaches in the development of unshakable character. This perspective transforms the entire experience of being criticized. Instead of dreading judgment, you begin to welcome the opportunities it provides for growth. Instead of avoiding situations where you might be criticized, you engage more boldly with the world, knowing that whatever feedback you receive will ultimately serve your development. Think about the people who have criticized you most harshly throughout your life. Did any of their criticism, even if delivered poorly, ultimately help you become stronger, wiser, or more skilled? Did any of their challenges force you to examine yourself more honestly or work harder to improve? Did any of their doubts motivate you to prove them wrong or to clarify your own values? Seneca discovered that his harshest critics often became his most effective teachers, not because they intended to help him, but because their challenges forced him to develop qualities he might never have cultivated otherwise. Their hostility taught him patience. Their unfairness taught him justice. Their attempts to diminish him taught him the difference between his true worth and others' opinions of his worth. The sixth principle Seneca developed addresses one of the most common mistakes people make when handling criticism: trying to defend themselves against every attack. This approach is not only exhausting, it's counterproductive. When you feel compelled to respond to every criticism, you signal to others that their opinions have tremendous power over you. You also waste enormous amounts of energy that could be better invested in actual improvement. Seneca learned to distinguish between criticism that deserved a response and criticism that deserved only acknowledgement before moving on. Not every attack requires a defense. Not every judgment needs to be corrected. Not every misunderstanding needs to be clarified. Sometimes the most powerful response to criticism is no response at all, or simply, "Thank you for sharing your perspective." This doesn't mean being passive or allowing people to spread false information about you without consequence. It means choosing your battles wisely and responding strategically rather than reactively. When you respond to criticism from a place of strength and choice rather than weakness and compulsion, your responses carry more weight and accomplish more. The key is asking yourself, what will I gain by responding to this criticism? Will my response serve my goals, my values, and my growth? Or will it simply satisfy my ego's need to be right and to be seen as right? If the answer is the latter, Seneca would advise silence or, at most, a brief acknowledgement before redirecting your attention to more productive pursuits. The seventh principle might be the most practically important: learning to extract maximum value from criticism by treating it as free consulting. Even your harshest critics are spending their time and energy analyzing your actions, your work, and your character. Why not take advantage of their analysis, even if you ultimately reject their conclusions? When someone criticizes you, instead of immediately defending yourself, ask questions. Can you be more specific about what you think I should do differently? What would success look like from your perspective? What do you think I should prioritize that I'm currently not prioritizing? These questions serve multiple purposes. They demonstrate that you're confident enough to engage with criticism constructively. They often reveal whether the critic has actually thought deeply about their feedback, and they help you extract maximum information from the interaction. Sometimes critics who seem initially hostile become more constructive when they realize you're genuinely interested in understanding their perspective. Sometimes critics who seem to have valuable insights reveal that their feedback is based on limited information or personal bias. Either way, you learn something valuable about the criticism and the critic. Seneca regularly engaged his critics in this way, not to change their minds about him, but to understand their perspectives more completely. He found that many critics, when pressed for specifics, couldn't articulate exactly what they thought he should do differently. Others provided insights that genuinely helped him improve his teaching, his writing, and his decision-making. The eighth principle addresses perhaps the most painful form of criticism: attacks on your character rather than your actions. When someone doesn't just criticize what you've done but who you are as a person, the temptation is either to dismiss them entirely or to accept their judgment as definitive truth about yourself. Seneca developed a more nuanced approach. He understood that character-based criticism often contains useful information about how your actions are being perceived and interpreted by others, even if the critic's conclusions about your motivations are wrong. If someone calls you selfish, they might be wrong about your intentions, but they might be right that some of your actions appear selfish to others. If someone calls you arrogant, they might misunderstand your confidence, but they might be accurately reporting how that confidence comes across. The practice is to separate the critic's interpretation of your motivations from their observation of your behavior's impact. You can reject their judgment of your character while still considering whether their perception of your actions contains useful feedback about how you're affecting others. This approach protects you from both the devastation of accepting every character attack as truth and the blindness of rejecting every behavioral observation as irrelevant. It allows you to maintain your sense of self-worth while remaining open to information about how you can be more effective in your relationships and endeavors. As we integrate these principles into a comprehensive approach to handling criticism, we must address the most challenging scenario of all: criticism that comes from people whose opinions matter deeply to us. When a parent, spouse, close friend, or respected mentor criticizes us harshly, all of our philosophical training can seem to evaporate in an instant. The stakes feel higher, the wounds cut deeper, and our usual techniques for maintaining perspective may seem inadequate. Seneca faced this challenge regularly, not just from political enemies but from fellow philosophers who questioned his choices, from friends who disapproved of his wealth, and from family members who worried about his safety. He discovered that the principles for handling criticism from strangers work equally well with loved ones, but they require even more discipline to apply because our emotional investment is so much greater. The key insight is this: the closer someone is to you, the more important it becomes to distinguish between criticism of your actions and rejection of your worth as a person. People we love can say hurtful things when they're afraid, frustrated, or disappointed, without meaning to wound us as deeply as they do. Learning to hear the fear or concern beneath harsh words from loved ones, while still extracting any valuable feedback they're offering, is perhaps the highest form of emotional maturity. When someone you care about criticizes you harshly, Seneca's approach was to ask himself, what is this person afraid of? What do they need that they're not getting? What are they trying to protect or achieve through this criticism? Often, the answers to these questions revealed that the criticism wasn't really about him at all. It was about their own fears, needs, and frustrations projected onto his actions. This understanding doesn't excuse hurtful behavior, but it does provide a framework for responding with wisdom rather than reactivity. When you can see the pain or fear driving someone's harsh words, you can address their underlying concerns while protecting yourself from taking their delivery method personally. But perhaps the most profound application of Seneca's teachings on criticism involves what he called the mirror of virtue, using every piece of feedback as an opportunity to examine yourself against your own highest standards rather than against others' expectations. This is where criticism transforms from an external evaluation into an internal investigation. When someone criticizes you, instead of asking, "Are they right about me?" ask, "What would the best version of myself do in this situation? How can I respond in a way that aligns with my values and serves my growth, regardless of whether this criticism is fair or unfair?" This question shifts your focus from defending yourself to developing yourself, from managing others' perceptions to embodying your principles. This approach makes you virtually immune to the destructive effects of criticism while maximizing its constructive potential. When your primary concern is living up to your own standards rather than meeting others' expectations, criticism becomes just another form of information to consider rather than a threat to your worth or peace of mind. Seneca demonstrated this throughout his life by consistently asking not, "What do others think of my choices?" but "Are my choices aligned with wisdom, justice, courage, and self-discipline?" This internal compass guided him through years of external judgment and allowed him to maintain his philosophical commitments even when they were unpopular or dangerous. The practical application of this principle involves developing what we might call internal scorecard thinking. Instead of measuring your worth by others' approval or disapproval, you measure it by your own honest assessment of whether you're living according to your values and working toward your authentic goals. Criticism becomes just one source of information in this ongoing self-evaluation, no more or less important than your own observations of your actions and their outcomes. This doesn't mean becoming narcissistic or dismissive of all feedback. It means developing the psychological independence to value others' insights without being dependent on others' approval. It means caring about how your actions affect others without allowing others' opinions to determine your self-worth. The final lesson from Seneca's approach to criticism might be the most liberating. Understanding that mastery of this skill is not about reaching a point where criticism no longer affects you emotionally. Even Seneca, after decades of philosophical practice, continued to feel the sting of harsh words. The difference was that he had learned to feel the sting without being poisoned by it, to experience the pain without being destroyed by it. Emotional invulnerability isn't the goal, emotional intelligence is. The goal isn't to stop caring what others think, it's to care in a way that serves your growth rather than sabotaging it. The goal isn't to become immune to criticism, it's to become skilled at extracting value from it while protecting yourself from its potential to cause unnecessary suffering. This skill develops gradually, through practice and experience. Each time you handle criticism well, each time you remain calm when attacked, extract wisdom from harsh feedback, or respond to judgment with grace, you build your capacity to do it again, even more skillfully. Each time you handle criticism poorly, you learn something about your triggers, your vulnerabilities, and your areas for continued growth. Seneca's ultimate teaching about criticism is that it reveals character more clearly than almost any other experience. How you handle praise shows what you value. How you handle criticism shows who you are. When someone attacks your work, your choices, or your character, you have an opportunity to demonstrate patience, wisdom, humility, and strength. You have a chance to show that your peace of mind doesn't depend on others' approval and that your commitment to growth is stronger than your need to be right. The modern world will never stop criticizing. Social media guarantees that more people than ever can share their opinions about your choices, your work, and your life. Cancel culture means that criticism can have consequences that previous generations never faced. The pace of communication means that criticism travels faster and reaches more people than ever before. But the principles Seneca developed remain as relevant today as they were 2,000 years ago. The technology has changed, but human nature hasn't. People still criticize others out of fear, envy, and their own unresolved pain. People still judge others to avoid examining themselves. People still attack others to feel better about their own inadequacies. And people still have the opportunity to respond to all of this criticism with wisdom, grace, and strength. You can still choose to be guided by valuable feedback while remaining centered in the face of unfair attacks. You can still extract gold from even the harshest criticism while protecting yourself from its potential to wound unnecessarily. If you found value in these insights from Seneca's approach to criticism, subscribe to join others who are committed to developing unshakable character in a world full of judgment. Share this with someone who might benefit from these ancient techniques for handling modern criticism. And remember, every time someone criticizes you, they're offering you a chance to practice virtue, to demonstrate strength, and to grow in wisdom. The critics will never stop coming, but your skill in handling them can continue growing for the rest of your life. Seneca faced criticism that could have killed him and used it to become one of history's wisest teachers. You can face whatever criticism comes your way and use it to become the strongest, wisest, most authentic version of yourself. The choice, as always, is yours. But now you have the tools to make that choice wisely.